Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video focuses or showcases two Minchiate decks. One named Etruria by Los Scarabea, Anima Antigua, and the other Fiorentine. And this deck is published by Il Meneghello. Now, Etruria is another word for Tuscan or Tuscany, and Fiorentina rather, excuse me, is Florence. And so both of these decks come out of the Tuscan region of Italy. Here would be Rome, here, Florence, Bologna up here, and we've seen, most recently I've done decks on like Lombardy, Piedmont, Bologna. But today, these two decks are from the Tuscan region of Italy. The city that we know of would be Florence. Now, both of these decks are from the 1800s. I put the Minchiate Etruria first because we have the date here between 1806 and 1807. So unless the Minchiate Florentine is earlier than 1806, I'm presuming that it's a little bit later. There is no date on this deck other than 19th century. But presumably, since they're from the same region, they will share traditions. So we see in this deck, and we've seen it in the Metelli, which was from Bologna, a Fool card, very similar to one another. We're not really sure. I'm not really sure. They look like balloons. Balloons did exist. They would have been made out of animal intestines, but I don't know if those are actually balloons or not. An individual behind this character is holding some type of device that looks like it might be affected by wind, but I don't know that either. The Fool here has the spark of the tradition that we think of with the Fool, in that he wears feathers in his hair, which is my understanding was a signal of a light-headed person or a foolish person, a person with light thoughts. And here we have what we traditionally call the magician. He doesn't exactly look like a mountebank. He doesn't exactly look like he's playing a game. And he continues to have a feather in his cap. And there continues to be an audience. I can't say as I know exactly what is happening in this card. He does have boxes. Maybe it is, the game. I don't know, the game with a ball, but it doesn't look like that. It looks maybe some kind of transaction is happening. Nothing underneath the table. Again, they're very similar. There is no female pope in this deck. Again, it's Italy. Like Bologna, there were probably political reasons for not having, a woman representing the church. Some argue that the female pope was probably reassigned, in meaning, when you want to use it for divinatory purposes, with the faith card, which we'll get to later. But the female pope, or the number 2 card, was reassigned as a Grand Duke. And this Grand Duke on the left has a type of kind of like a feline dog creature. It's kind of strange. But we see the globe that we often associate with the emperor or the empress even, and a staff, and that he is crowned. He has long hair. He's a pretty face. He's young. So maybe it was intended for him to look feminine, or younger at least, than the emperor. And I believe this emperor would be of the West. Again, we see the eagle, we see the globe, we see the staff that we typically see. And then this would be the emperor of the East. Now, the emperor of the West, as well as the emperor of the East, are both bearded. Let me check and make sure. But I believe they were both bearded, yeah. So the emperors are older, more mature, by virtue of having the beard. I think that is usually what beards signaled in images of that period. So we have the Lover card, very similar to one another, since they're coming from the same tradition of Tuscany. And you do notice, of course, the different numbering. We don't think of the Temperance card as being number 6, but that's the way it was. And we know that's the way it was because these cards are numbered. And of course, another thing I failed to mention is that Minchiate is an extended deck of 97 cards. It's within it contains 78 cards of a tarot deck, but it has additional cards. It has additional cards, which we'll see. So we have Fortitude, and we've seen Fortitude represented by a woman with a column. We've seen that before. Again, number 7 rather than number 8. And it's possible because we don't have the traditional cards 2 through 5 that it kind of changed the sequence. We only have, that's a possibility. So we have, interestingly, Justice kind of in reverse of one another. Again, like in the decks from the 1650s, the video I did yesterday, we noticed that the scales are askew, and they continue to be askew here. Of course, she has her sword. The chap on the bottom, interestingly, has a book. Chariot. And it's not just that the numbers are maybe misaligned, because they have different, because of the female pope being taken out, but they have Chariot following the Wheel of Fortune. So even if, the numbers would have been, thrown off by that, that wasn't the case. It was just the way they did it. Again, we have, in the tradition of the Italians, the old tradition of the hermit being represented by an infirmed individual, sometimes as a hunchback. Here, there's the addition of a stag, which I believe referenced time passing, as well as the hourglass with an arrow, which goes through, travels as well in case we miss the message. So time passing. And again, we have an older gentleman, he would have a beard. The tradition the Italian tradition of hanging a traitor, possible references to Judas Iscariot with bags of silver. It's a possibility that that is what that reference is. And I've done in many of my videos the reason that the hanged individual is alive is because these were kind of like wanted posters, right? Like you would see in a sheriff's office today, that this individual is being tried or sought for the crime of treason. He had to be awake because we had to be able to identify who it is. And in this case, boy, don't they look feminine. This one does, at least. Like a woman. But, you know, they had to be awake because they were wanted posters, so we had to know who they were. Right? Death on his horse with his scythe. In both he's shouting. He appears to be making an audible sound. And the devil without anything in the belly. He has the winged, the style of wing for a creature at night, like a bat, maybe. This one at least. He's got the trident or the pitchfork. He's got his bird feet. He's got horns. The expulsion from the house of God. Kind of like an Adam and Eve story. Is he following? Is that Adam following Eve? Again, like divine retribution for a sin, maybe. And of course, this card has become the Tower in modern decks, or modern being from the 1600s. So this is after the Tarot of Marseille, right? This is after the Tower of Marseille. Okay, so we inexplicably cut from the Tower card. We go right into it looks like, what are these? We go right into a different series, a different set. So I think this set would be the virtues. So this looks like hope, you know. When you pray, you hope for something. And it's interesting that this card would follow the Tower card because the Star card follows the Tower card, and that is often thought of as the Hope card. So it's interesting to speculate connections between, you know, the sequence or the understanding of the cards that, you know, change over time. Oh yes, these have to be the virtues, because we have prudence, often represented with a mirror, and I don't know why. She's got a snake in her lap, and she's holding a mirror. And oftentimes we have the Florentine flair of, I should have recognized it immediately as a virtue, because they will have that kind of halo. You know, showing that it's a virtue. So, faith. And charity makes sense. There's we have charity. Okay, now we go into the elements. So clearly the element of fire. dog-like creature in the fire. But I don't know if it is a dog. Then we have water. And where have we seen this card before? We have Earth. Now look at this and tell me, especially in this particular deck, tell me that this does not remind you of the Moon card, right? I did a blog about this and discussing other cards that kind of have the same kind of cross-referencing of other cards, right? I mean, you know, this is the card that represents Earth. You know, we have a bridge of some sort or a bank over water. We have two dog-like creatures or whatever they are in this card. They're in the water, not above it. We have two towers, and then we have a circular shape of the tree which occupies the sky. And, you know, does something get lost in translation? You know, when it was copied a dozen times and this no longer looked like a tree. Maybe it looked like a moon in the sky and the towers, and then the dogs somehow got put above, and then, I don't know. But, you know, it's curious to me how, at least the way I see it, it looks like the moon card. We don't see it so much in this card, in this particular version, but I see it here. And then we have air. And I guess the birds are a clue that it's air and the clouds move. And again, we have some kind of unusual animal with a funny tongue. And here we have the sun peeping out from behind the mountains. That's cute, a nice detail, right? Okay, so now we seem to go into, I think, signs of the zodiac. Now, since these are scales, I'm presuming this must be Libra. Like a porcupine kind of animal, the scales. A fox-like animal, although it's not red. A gray fox. Virgo. Scorpio. Interestingly, in reverse of one another. Like one copied the other, and then when it was printed, it was reversed. And I think that explains a lot of the way things got flipped over. Aries. A ram and a sheep, it looks like. A ram and a cat. I don't know what that is. Ram and a calf. Capricorn. Sagittarius. And you notice the different, so I'm guessing that this deck, maybe this deck was earlier because that is the older style of Roman numerals. So even though I assumed that the 1806, 1807 probably came before a general date for this one of just like, you know, the 1800s or the 19th century, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this one did come first. Maybe this is predates 1806. I don't know. And then Cancer, the crab. Pisces, the fish. And Aquarius, the water bearer. When this sign of the zodiac, or when this constellation appears in the sky, that's when the rains came. Then we have Leo. Taurus. Gemini. And here the twins are female. It looks like they're female. And here the twins are male. And then we go back with the Triumph cards. We pick up after the expulsion of Adam and Eve, or whatever that representation was on the House of God, the Tower card. Then we go with the Star, and we have a wanderer. We wish upon a star. We travel through the night. We travel through the evening by benefit of, navigation by benefit of stars, right? The stars guide us in dark moments. It's a hopeful card. It's my favorite card in a tarot deck usually. I mean, in idea, if someone asks me what's my favorite card, my favorite card is the Star card. And we have the Moon, kind of like a sundial without the dial. And the face in the moon. The Sun with a pair of lovers. Here we see maybe a garden wall or city wall. So they're within a garden, maybe. Having a romantic moment in broad daylight. And you'll notice that the World card comes before the Angel card. And that was the order of play, and it still remains the order of play for many people who play the game in Italy. And I have mentioned this a number of times. I so much prefer a World card that doesn't have the central figure with a wreath and the four evangelists. I just love almost any other version of the World card. Now, the World card is, a most fortuitous card to appear. And I just, no matter how it looks, putting my prejudices aside, it doesn't take away from the fact that the World card is a great card. But I so much prefer it to look anything other than a central figure within a wreath and the four evangelists, which we do still have those ingredients. We have a central figure. It's not a Christ-like figure, but it's a figure with, wings, maybe an angel or an angelic or virtuous individual. And then we have like the four directions, maybe the four corners of the world. So who knows, maybe this card was misunderstood, because Minchiate, even though these decks are from the 1800s, Minchiate has a long tradition in Italy of, from the 1500s. So, oh gosh, excuse me. I don't know why this is happening. My tripod is just being stupid. So there's a long tradition of